Welcome to the Shorten anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of Battle Through the Heavens. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. Battle Through the Heavens, Season 1, Episode 9. Looking at the green-clothed girl firmly walking forward, the training field became silent as blazing gazes focused upon her figure. From the high platform, all high-class clan members stopped their chatter as they also focused on the Pearl of Xiao clan. Xiao Yan, together with the three elders, all had a serious face, with a hint of curiosity. They really want to know what stage the #1 person of the younger generation in Xiao clan has achieved after 1 year of training. Here, all eyes zoomed intensively downwards at the girl who was walking towards the stone monument, at a pace that was neither slow nor fast. She raised her small hand, revealing her snow-white skin as the sleeve is pulled back. As her precious hand softly touched the stone monument, Xun Er gradually closes her eyes as her inner Du Qi quickly strengthened. Accepting the incoming Du Qi, the ever-silent monument shined out bright rays of light. 1 star Du Zhe. Looking at these 4 giant words shining on the stone monument in the center of the training ground, for a moment everybody was silenced. Then, as if awakening, they all burst into cheers. Miss Xun Er, 1 star, Du Jie. Being surprised by the 4 shining yellow letters, the operator couldn't help but shake his head. Haha, 15 years old Dao Jie, she truly is. Listening to the announcement of the examiner, Xiao Yan took a light breath, but his last words became mumbled. The 3 elders lightly nodded as their faces showed their surprise. Although there was still a slight difference with Xiao Yan's achievement of becoming a dosha. When he was 12 years old, this training speed of hers can be considered monstrous. In the middle of the training ground, Xiao Mei, who had just been admired by everyone, was also dizzied by the 4 shining words on the stone pillar. Staring at the monument, she felt a sense of helplessness. Only 15 years old to become a 1-star Dao Zhou. That achievement blinded her, who didn't expect that prowess from Xun Er. At the end of the crowd, Xiao Yan nervously pursed his lips. He didn't expect Xun Er to enter the Duja zone and also reach 1 star, a whole tier above someone who just compressed his or her chi cyclone. This speed of training can even be compared to him who's using foundation elixir to boost his training speed. Xun Er ignored the other people and furrowed her brow disapprovingly, as if she didn't like the attention. Then she walked back into the crowd, and noticing Xiao Yan's surprise, she smiled playfully. Don't be so proud. With your talent, this achievement is within my expectation. If you didn't reach Doja level, then I would be quite surprised. Xiao Yan shrugged and joked. Hearing that, Xun Er's little face became sorrowful for a moment, glancing at him. Pulling Xun Er to sit down on the mat, Xiao Yan looked bored as he observed other clan members continuing the examinations. Honestly speaking, to train one's Do Qi to 7 Duan Qi before the age of 15 required decent talent to succeed. However, those with decent talent aren't as plentiful as one may think, and even within the entire Xiao clan, only 2 to 3/10 people make it. As time passed, more and more people were deemed unqualified, dulling the atmosphere of the training field. Those that didn't pass showed a long face when they were rejected, but when they saw others also not pass, a slight smile would creep onto their faces. Sitting on the ground, Xiao Yan continued to observe the examination. Over 100 of examinee, but only 2 people were like Xiao Mei and got 8 Duan Qi, and nobody achieved 9 Duan Qi, let alone becoming a dojo. Of course, it's with Xun Er excluded. On the field, the number of examinees slowly dwindled, and finally there were only Xiao Yan and several people left. Soon, a bleak young examinee stood up and went up, even though he knew that he had no chance of qualifying. For the last dozen or so examinees, everybody knew that these people were at the bottom of the clan, and if not for fair examinations, it was probably that these people would have been disqualified without ever testing. Xiao Yan. Standing next to the stone pillar below, the operator announced the name with difficulty. Xiao Yan Geigi, it's your turn, Xun Er said gently, her soft, small hands lightly holding Xiao Yan's hand. Slightly raising his head, Xiao Yan opened his eyes and scanned the training field. He couldn't help but snicker when he saw the gazes filled with expectations of his failure. Slowly standing up, Xiao Yan turned his head toward the high platform and grinned at Xiao Yan. Looking at his son coming forward while smiling toward him, Xiao Yan cheerfully nodded his head, while one hand brought a teacup forward and smoothly laid back on his chair. Silently inhaling, Xiao Yan confidently walked toward the stone pillar. His eyes shined a strange light that made the laughing clan members widen their eyes. Under complex gazes, Xiao Yan finally got to the black monument. Looking at the black-clothed youth in front of him, the examiner sighed internally. That year, when Xiao Yan created a miracle, he was the first one to witness it, but he was also the witness of the sad steps of the genius. 3 years after that bright shine. If today's miracle doesn't happen, this would also be the last time this youth gets examined. On the training ground, the intense gazes focused on Xiao Yan, whose chest slowly rose as he brought his hand forward and rested it upon the cold, hard stone pillar. At this moment, everybody focused their gaze upon the monument. They all knew that this was the last time they would ever see the genius who once shocked all of Wutan City in a Do Qi examination. The stone monument went silent for a moment before bright light blazed out. Upon the stone monument were bright yellow words, making all the hearts in the field stop for a moment. Duzi Li, 7 Duan. Silence, a death-like silence. Everyone in the field looked at the monument's 5 words in shock. Their facial expressions were colorful, and soon countless deep breaths resonated throughout the field. Kacha! On the high platform, Xiao Zhan's jade cup was crushed to dust as a mix of dust and tea trickled down his hand. 7 Duan. Xun Er, you really did it. Xiao Zhan's eyes moistened as he watched the young man under the black monument. He knew that in order to get to 7 Duan Shi, Xiao Yan must have made an incredible effort. The 3 elders next to Xiao Zhan had faces full of incredulity. To have gone from 3 Duan Shi just a year ago to 7 Duan? This speed, impossible. Haha, Clan Leader's Foundation elixir is pretty good. The second elder swallowed dryly and combined his shock with his not yet gone taunt from before to make a ridiculous expression. Xiao Zhan didn't hide his excitement when he said, Second elder, do you really believe that a second-tier foundation elixir has such a strong effect? The second elder paused before shaking his head. He was no idiot and knew that even though the foundation elixir could raise one's training speed, it was physically impossible to raise 4 Duan Qi within a year. Next to the black monument, the operator blankly stared at the words on the monument as his impassive face was now full of shock. Xiao Yan, Dozi Qi, 7 Duan, high level. Taking a deep breath to calm his shock, the operator tried hard to keep his voice calm, but a couple of tremors could still be heard. Hearing the operator's announcement, the originally silent field had gone deathly quiet. No one even rustled their clothing or fidgeted. In the crowd, Xiao Mei covered her red mouth as her face was frozen in a moment of incredible shock. To raise 4 Duan Qi in a year was like a myth, only heard of in legends. This was a speed that even the Xiao Yan 3 years ago, at his peak, could not have done. But this mythical speed coming from a cripple was displayed in front of their eyes. With complex emotions, Xiao Mei stared at the young man next to the black monument while a thought popped up in her head. His incredible talent seems to have come back. At the edge of the training field, Xiao Ning, who was ready to insult Xiao Yan, was also blankly staring at the monument while whispering, how is this possible? Looking up to the golden words on the monument, Xiao Yan let out a light breath. Taking in the complex gazes around made him recall the glory that he had gone through 3 years ago. Now that his training talent had come back, he had also gained a mature mind and stubborn persistence. Taking a deep look at the monument that had determined his fate, not once, not twice by thrice, Xiao Yan made a slight smile. His calm and passive demeanor was a sharp contrast from his gleeful attitude 3 years ago. Taking a small breath, Xiao Yan walked down under the penetrating gaze of everyone and sat down next to Xun Er. Even though Xiao Yan had left the monument, the entire field was still silent. Ahem! On the high platform, Xiao Zhan happily stood up and coughed to gather the attention of everyone in the field. The examination has finished. Next up, those that did not make have the chance to challenge someone who has already passed. Remember, there's only one chance, Xiao Zhan said with a smile. Hearing that, the training field became disorderly. Those that only missed the cutoff by a bit sent their hot gazes towards those that made it. Watching the challenging gazes, the clansmen that made the cut would raise their heads in disdain. There was a huge gap between 6 Duan Qi and 7 Duan Qi, and without any special occurrences, someone who's 6 Duan Qi couldn't even touch someone who's 7 Duan Qi. The 6 Duan Qi people knew this very well, but this was their last chance to stay in the inner circles of the clan. They would have to try and hope for a miracle. With Xiao Zhan's words, the atmosphere in the training field took a weird turn. Intense gazes swept across those that made the cut and silently chose the weakest opponent. Sitting on the ground, Xiao Yan suddenly opened his eyes in surprise. A majority of the gazes were directed at him. Do I look like someone who can be beat so easily? After a brief period of shock, Xiao Yan laughed on the inside. Xiao Yan Ge jumped 4 duanxi in 1 year. Even though it's shocking, it's so shocking that many people don't believe it. Therefore, they would think that Xiao Yan is the easiest opponent. Beside him, Xun Er explained. Carelessly shrugging his shoulders, Xiao Yan patted the dust off of his robe while saying, "They can choose to not believe it, but they will know." Xun Er gave a smile and nodded. Finally, after a brief period of calm, someone couldn't stand it and stood up. A well-built young man, under everyone's gaze, quickly walked in front of Xiao Yan and loudly said, "Xiao Yan Biao Di, please." Even though the young man was respectful, Xiao Yan, who was across from him, could see hints of disbelief flash through his eyes. In addition, his face showed an arrogant disdain. Looks like he hasn't recovered from Xiao Yan's former name of being a cripple. Watching the quick challenger, the other unqualified clansmen let out a sigh of regret. It seemed like they were all envious of the well-built young man in front of Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes as he examined the young man. Even though he didn't know all of the clansmen in the clan, he had quite an impression of the young man in front of him. If his memory served him, the young man was called Xiao Ke and was a supporter of the first elder. Normally, he'd follow behind Xiao Ning like a small henchman, and when Xiao Yan fell from genius, Xiao Ke never showed him any kindness, and instead trampled over Xiao Yan's dignity. Recalling old memories, Xiao Yan's mouth curved to a dangerous angle. Turning to look at the smiling Xun Er, Xiao Yan smiled while nodding, saying, "All right, I accept." Seeing how easily Xiao Yan answered, Xiao Ke's eyebrows twitched, and a sense of fear snuck into his heart. Dryly swallowing, Xiao Ke started to regret his recklessness. Even though he was somewhat regretful, Xiao Ke couldn't back down and had to continue through. No way, to raise 4 duanxi in 1 year is impossible. This guy must have used some method to fool everyone. I can definitely beat him. After wordlessly encouraging himself, Xiao Ke smiled. Then I'll see how strong Xiao Yan Biaodi is. Xiao Yan smiled and didn't say anything. Standing up, he walked to the center of the training field and motioned for Xiao Ke to follow him. Watching the calm Xiao Yan, Xiao Ke's heart skipped a beat, and he no longer felt so sure. Forcefully smiling, he walked with stiff strides into the field. With the 2 people in the field, even the calculating gazes from the people who did not pass quickly moved on to the 2 in the field. On the high platform, Xiao Zhan took a handkerchief that was brought up to him and cleaned his hand of residue tea while intently staring at the training field with a sense of tension in his eyes. To be honest, not only did the younger generation have doubt about Xiao Yan's achievements, Xiao Zhan himself couldn't completely believe it either. This wasn't because of his lack of trust in Xiao Yan, but rather because of how impossible of a feat it was to raise 4 duanxi in just 1 year. It was inhuman. Even the Xiao Yan 4 years ago couldn't hope to achieve it. Because of how incredible the achievement was, nobody could believe what they were saying. But no matter if it was fake or real, no matter if the others believed it or not, once Xiao Yan fought, his real strength would be exposed. At that time, everyone would have their thoughts confirmed or disproved. Besides Xiao Zhan, the 3 elders' breathing intensified as their hands gripped deep hand marks on their respective chairs, and their muddled eyes stared at the training field. In the Green Rock training field, everyone's vision was glued to the 2 within the training field. Once Xiao Yan fought with Xiao Ke, everything would be clear. It's definitely fake. At the edge of the training field, Xiao Ning licked his dry lips and angrily whispered, "It should be fake, right?" Within the crowd, Xiao Mei bit her lip. She couldn't believe that the young man that had been crippled 3 years would have such a monstrous achievement. Under stare after stare, Xiao Yan and Xiao Ke in the training field had already finished their perfunctory ritual gestures and were about to fight. Both of Xiao Ke's hands were tilted upwards as light dew qi started swirling around his hands. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Ke stomped heavily on the ground and started to ram towards Xiao Yan. Low-level fights didn't have any complex gestures and were composed of the simplest attacks. Splitting Mountain Hand! Quickly nearing Xiao Yan, Xiao Ke's right hand quickly gathered dou qi as it swept over to Xiao Yan's chest. Splitting Mountain Hand. a middle Huangdo technique that was only available to clan members 5 Duanqi and higher. With the gust incoming, the lagging hair on Xiao Yan's face blew away as a pair of dark eyes were revealed. Blinking, Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes, watching the ever-nearer hand. When the hand finally reached Xiao Yan's shoulder, Xiao Yan smoothly took a step to the left. With a year's worth of body training, Xiao Yan's reactions were incredibly quick. With only one step, Xiao Yan avoided Xiao Ke's attack. At the same time, Xiao Yan lightly twisted his body as his hand reached through Xiao Ke's arm and went to Xiao Ke's shoulder as if he was picking a leaf from a tree. Shatter Rock Hand! Shatter Rock Hand, a low Huang level Do technique that only required 3 Duanqi to learn. Pang! A dull sound occurred as Xiao Yan's hand landed firmly on Xiao Ke's shoulder, causing Xiao Ke's flush red face to pale. With a low grunt, he slowly stepped backwards, before finally losing strength in his legs and fell to the ground like a turtle. The whole field was silent. Xiao Ke's defeat proved many things. Defeating his opponent in one attack, Xiao Yan shook his head bored. This kind of opponent wasn't even a challenge for Xiao Yan. Not mentioning Octane Blast, Xiao Yan hadn't even used half of his strength yet. Of course, contrary to Xiao Yan's bored feeling, everyone within the field was shocked. Many of them slowly closed their eyes because Xiao Yan had to be at least 7 Duanqi to have easily beat Xiao Ke, who was a 6 Duanqi. Thinking about that, Xiao Yan's previous monstrous performance was proved to be true. To raise 4 Duanqi in just 1 year, his result was a miracle within a miracle on the high platform. Xiao Zhan let out a deep breath as a weight was lifted from his heart. Is it true, 7 Duanqi? Watching the defeated Xiao Ke, Xiao Mei's small hand covered her red lips as she couldn't help but gasp. Watching the black-clothed young man with his hands behind his back, the whole field was quiet again. On the high platform, Xiao Zhan's smile slowly widened, before finally he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Hearing the gleeful laughter from Xiao Zhan, the 3 elders looked at each other and sighed. However, they didn't try to do anything else against Xiao Yan. The potential displayed by Xiao Yan gave them a sense of defeat. 4 Duanqi in 1 year was something that would make anyone shocked. Their sons and grandsons wouldn't hope to ever have that pace. With a light heart, Xiao Zhan clapped while announcing, "Xiao Ke has lost. Hopefully you will continue to train hard." In the training field, the pale-faced Xiao Ke heard the announcement and drooped his head in disappointment. Taking a look at the black-clothed young man not far from him, he recalled about how he had insulted the very person, calling him a cripple just a year ago. Now 1 year later, the cripple was quite close to the top of the clan and far above him. This extreme difference made Xiao Ke recall the words he had heard in the hall just a few months before. 30 years east, 30 years west, don't you dare bully me because I'm poor now. Shaking his head with a bitter smile, Xiao Ke got up with some difficulty. Slightly bowing to Xiao Yan, Xiao Ke's voice had lost all of its arrogance from before. "Xiao Yan Biaodi, you won. Congratulations on your recovery." Nodding, Xiao Yan's gaze slowly swept across the training field, and those that met his dark pupils all turned away their gaze with nervousness and unease. His gaze pausing on Xiao Mei, who was staring at him, Xiao Yan twisted his face to face the clansman that didn't pass and asked with a smile, "Is there anyone else who would like to challenge me?" Watching Xiao Yan, the clansmen that were eager to challenge Xiao Yan before Xiao Ke went up all closed their mouths and looked up at the sky as if Xiao Yan's words had nothing to do with them. None of them would go up and be the second challenger. Watching the childish acts of pretending to be a fool, Xiao Yan lightly shrugged and walked back. Seeing Xiao Yan sit beside her, Xun Er smiled while examining the field. Picking up a strand of her hair and twirling it, she whispered, "Xiao Yan Ge, 3 years ago, they looked at you like this. 3 years ago, I would have been excited by their respectful and fearful gazes, but today, I don't feel anything." Xiao Yan touched his nose and laughed. "Then Xiao Yan Ge has matured." Xun Er playfully blinked her eyes. "Not more mature than you. Sometimes I feel as if there's a 1,000-year monster hiding within you." Being called mature by a girl, Xiao Yan couldn't help but laugh. Intimately rubbing Xun Er's head, he let out a smile. Hearing that, Xun Er gave Xiao Yan an evil eye, and her delicate face showed an expression of rebuke. No matter how carefree a girl was, no one ever liked being called an old monster. Xun Er's expression of rebuke was so pretty that it attracted the stares of the young men around her, and even the stares of some of the girls. That brat, too pompous. Xiao Ning, like the others, was also attracted to Xun Er's expression of rebuke. But looking at the intimate chatter between Xun Er and Xiao Yan, an envious flame burned within him. His jealousy covered up his reasoning, as he thought that only he could match Xun Er within the entire clan. But thinking back, he realized that no matter what he did, Xun Er rarely smiled. On the other hand, Xiao Yan, who was a cripple, could always make Xun Er laugh. The difference between them made Xiao Ning crush his teeth in anger. "Brat, I'll let you be arrogant for now, but when the coming-of-age ceremony comes, I will make you look for your fallen teeth in front of Xun Er." Clenching his hands into fists, Xiao Ning gave a cold stare to the cross-legged Xiao Yan. Even though Xiao Ning was also shocked by Xiao Yan's training speed in the past year, he couldn't change his haughty manner that he was used to. In addition, Xiao Ning, being the only male within the entire clan that could barely be compared to Xun Er, felt a sense of danger from Xiao Yan's sudden performance. Before he grows strong, I'll give him a merciless beating. The best-case scenario is that the beating would leave a scar and break him from his training. While thinking his evil thoughts, the corners of Xiao Ning's mouth curved into a smile. Even though Xiao Yan was at 7 Duan Qi, Xiao Ning was still confident in his 8 Duan Qi. After all, each Duan of Qi after 7 Duan Qi had a huge difference between them. Chatting in a low voice with Xun Er, Xiao Yan's aimlessly sight gazed around the sides of the training field and caught the smile on Xiao Ning's face. Thinking for a moment, Xiao Yan realized what the smile was about and smiled himself, thinking, someone who can't even cover up his or her emotions can't pose to be a risk at all. After Xiao Ke lost to Xiao Yan, no one else dared to challenge Xiao Yan, who was sitting down, and those clansmen that didn't qualify set their sights on others. But after a couple rounds of challenges, only 2 people, relying on luck and familiar do techniques, were able to beat their opponent and qualify for the coming-of-age ceremony. Watching the slowly calming training field, the smiling Xiao Zhan stood up and announced the results, along with a couple of notices about next month's coming-of-age ceremony. Slowly standing up, Xiao Yan smiled towards the happy Xiao Zhan on the stage, while Xiao Zhan wasn't stingy about giving his qualified son a thumbs up. Right after dusting off his clothes, Xiao Yan detected a perfumed scent. Curling his brows slightly, Xiao Yan lifted his head to see Xiao Mei standing in front of him and asked, "Do you need anything?" Seeing the impassiveness and coldness on Xiao Yan's face, Xiao Mei's courage faltered as she forced out a smile and said, "Xiao Yan Biao Di, congratulations." "Thanks." Slightly nodding, Xiao Yan glanced at Xun Er beside him. "Xiao Yan Biao Di, my father will be personally teaching a high Huang level do technique at the Do Technique Hall tomorrow. Do you want to come with me?" Xiao Mei smiled, and her combination of a female's charm and a youth's delicacy created an irresistible question. Hearing that, Xiao Yan's brows slightly jumped. Right when Xiao Yan was about to find an excuse to reject Xiao Mei, a pale white arm slipped through and locked with his arm. Shocked, Xiao Yan turned around to find a smiling Xun Er. "Really sorry, Xiao Mei Ji." Jie means sister in Chinese. "Xun Er has already invited Xiao Yan Gege to accompany me tomorrow to visit Wutan City, and so he can't be going with Xiao Mei Jai to the Do Technique Hall." Under stunned stares, Xun Er held onto Xiao Yan's arm, while a hint of apology lingered on her delicate face. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.